welcome to a cover story conversation. It's been almost a month since the Pahalgam terror attack, since the escalation and the de-escalation of the action on our borders. But beyond that, what is the way forward? In fact, there are those who say that while India may have won the war militarily, are we losing the global narrative? We have said that from now on, the new normal is that any act of terrorism from Pakistan's side will be seen as an act of war from India's side. What does this translate really on the ground? We are sending out delegations abroad globally to try and explain India's stand. What success will they have? Because in the end, it's institutions really that decide how much of a role do personalities play. By personalities, I mean Donald Trump, Narendra Modi, and the newly appointed Field Marshal in Pakistan. That is something I'm going to be discussing with the panel of eminent speakers and experts. I have joining me on the show Ambassador KC Singh. He's a former Indian ambassador to Iran and the UAE, and Ambassador TCA Raghavan. He's been the former High Commissioner from India to Pakistan from 2013 to 15, and also he's headed the Pakistan, Afghanistan, and the Iran division in the MEA. Master Raghavan, I'll begin with you first. You've been there on ground in Pakistan also. So, how fragile and how enduring is this peace or whatever you want to call it? Not a ceasefire, we're not calling it that. And where do we go from here?
Well, nobody quite knows the extent of the fragility, but certainly it is not a very stable situation because the level of rhetoric is very high. There is a complete absence of diplomacy, and there are different perspectives in both India and Pakistan on how to see what has happened over the past 1 month or so, or since the terrorist attack in Pahalgam. In India, the perspective is that this was a very, very focused counter-terrorism operation, and it cannot be understood except in those terms. In Pakistan, on the other hand, it's a much older mindset which has come to the fore, which is of standing up to India, where the entire chain of events is seen in terms of Indian hegemonic behavior, Indian militaristic bullying, etc., etc. The most worrying part, at least in terms of how I see it, is the complete absence of diplomacy, and nobody seems to have a clue as to how diplomacy can again emerge in this current very, very unstable landscape.
Well, Katie, will you come in on this? How will diplomacy emerge? India is trying its best, but at the end of the day, no one really stood up for India. That part has become glaringly obvious. Can these delegations rectify that? Otherwise, how does diplomacy now step in?
No, I don't think so. These are not very high-level delegations. If you notice, they are being met really not by the head of state or heads of government. They are being met by sort of 2 levels below that. They're treating them as parliamentary delegations. So in places where there's a parliament, they've met their counterparts or chairman of some committee. And now whose argument is it that chairman of a committee in Moscow will go and tell Putin what his stand should be? I don't think that's going to matter. Then they're going to Germany, but the foreign secretary has already met the new chancellor. So what can this delegation do in addition to what the foreign secretary has already done? And you take the UAE, where I've been ambassador, Sheikh Nahyan met them. Sheikh Nahyan is from a collateral family. He's not from Sheikh Zayed's. He's not a lineal descendant from Sheikh Zayed or a full brother or half brother of Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed, who's the president. He's a cousin of his. And he's a very decent man. And his majlis, you didn't need any, you could just anybody, I could take anybody there. Prakash Singh Badal came on a private visit. I took him to Sheikh Nahyan's majlis. So it really has not much relevance. Then they had a couple of representatives of their national security, national level, some kind of a democratic structure they have. And they met them. So unless, you see, Prime Minister has been meeting Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed. They know each other very well. Now, if a phone call if they didn't speak to each other on the phone about it, then really what is it the delegation can do, which Prime Minister in 5 minutes cannot do? The Emiratis know all about it. This is not the first time. They've been sending handing terrorists back to us, etc. But they do a balancing between India and Pakistan. And we should be in no illusion at all that they would condemn terrorism. They've gone after Muslim Brotherhood. They tried cleaning up their country after 9/11. But it doesn't mean they're going to abandon Pakistan. You see, both for Saudi Arabia and UAE, Pakistan is their last recourse when it comes to nuclear weapons. If Iran goes nuclear, Americans are not going to help Saudis or the Emiratis. These two countries have invested in the nuclear program of Pakistan. So there is a subtle understanding which is there. And they always kind of count on Pakistan as their last resort in case things go wrong. Nobody trusts America, and then certainly not Trump. They may humor him and buy $2 billion, invest $2 billion in his cryptocurrency. But that means nothing. That's small change for these countries. They are used to people coming to them and asking for money, and they think that's the way to appease them. But that doesn't mean that there is a strategic engagement or they trust Trump or trust America at all. If the NATO countries can't trust him, I mean, how can the GCC countries trust him? So I think we are at a situation, and it's been complicated by President Trump. By coming out, you see, the Pakistani Prime Minister came out very early and said, we won. Now, what is their definition of a win? Their definition of a win is it wasn't a military win or loss. We can say we did more damage. They claim they brought our planes down. We don't know. But we definitely know we hit their airports. But the win for them was that since 2019, the BJP government said, Kashmir issue is over. No, I said since then, 2019, we had no dialogue with Pakistan. We thought the whole thing is over. And we have annexed this. And we had split the state, turned into a union territory, and run it through a lieutenant governor. And Pakistan didn't figure in it at all. We thought it's gone down the tube, it's finished, and that was a strategic mistake. Because Pakistan may get weaker, their army doesn't. We have to make that distinction. The nation may go down the tube, and the Chinese will not let them. As we discovered that the new Chinese jets and all have performed not too badly, etc. So even though their defense system, air defense, we were able to penetrate. But as the international community sees it, I don't go in terms of our narrative or their narrative, but the competition between narratives internationally, they see it as a kind of a draw. They see it as, something where now you should sit down and talk, and that's where Trump comes in. The minute Americans come in, Pakistan has a win because they always want Americans to come and mediate. They want Kashmir to be upfront. And what makes it worse is they are non-permanent members of the Security Council, UN Security Council at the moment. And they'll be chairing it in July. So which means for a month, they'll be chairing the UN Security Council. That's why bulk of these delegations have gone to the 10 non-permanent, or 9. We can't send one to Pakistan. 9 non-permanent member nations. I think that was necessary to go and talk to them. And also to the 4, other than China, 4 other permanent members, which is US, China, England, and Russia. So those are the 4 that we are talking to. Now, the argument that we're making has already been made publicly. In today's world, I don't think we need to go and really sit down and do it. It's all on social media. It's all media. But essentially, I think we fell a little behind where handling of the international narrative and media was concerned. Because, on the first day we just came out, a statement was read out. We can't take any questions. Now, in these things, you can't do it. You have to take questions. You have to have a proper narrative. And you have to engage the media. So Indian media will take it. But the international media is not getting anything from you at that stage. What was your narrative? What was your story? You have to tell your story. Now, let me give you one example. The first meeting...
And then I'll bring an Ambassador Raghavan.
Yeah. You want me to mention this? Or let me just tell you that when India-Pakistan, the first encounter after we tested a nuclear weapons was in 98 on the sidelines of the SAARC meeting in Colombo. I was then the spokesman of the ministry. So this was at a Taj Hotel where there's the old building and there's the new building at the back where the rooms are. Old building has the rooms where there was a large hall and meeting rooms where the Indian and the Pakistan delegations, Pakistan led by Nawaz Sharif, they were going to be meeting. Now, I went straight to the general manager and I said, I need this hall because I want to be the first one for the Indian side to be briefing the media. There are almost 100 media there. So we had them there, we had the chairs, and we said, we will have the first shot at the media. You don't let Pakistan have a first shot at the media. And that's what happened. We briefed them first, and then the Pakistani asked me, can we use this? I said, sure. Now we got the main story. And so you have to handle the media. I didn't see that happening this time.
I remember even during the Agra summit post Kargil, the same problem. Musharraf got his point across. Yeah, so narrative
Well, I didn't
management.
let them. Let me tell you, in Colombo, I didn't let them. I had gone. I don't know who had the first word. In Colombo, they didn't.
Okay. But Master Raghavan, this, narrative management is very important. And I do think we did learn one lesson from Balakot. At least when we came and announced to the world, we came with the proof of the strikes this time in Operation Sindoor. But again, a lot has been lagging a lot because not for our thing, but also India's place and Pakistan's place in the world. Can you explain that in those terms?
Well, narratives are important, and certainly we should focus much more strongly on our narrative, as Ambassador K.C. Singh just pointed out. But apart from the narrative issues, there are also real issues. And the real issue is concerning Pakistan, policy towards Pakistan, and what do you do about a major terrorist attack and a terrorist threat that you face. So your objective is to keep a very strong focus on terrorism, and there you do get a lot of support and a lot of sympathy because most countries now have come to understand the difficulties of dealing with a very, very recalcitrant Pakistan. But once your counterterrorism measures merge into a military standoff or a military situation, then international perspectives change because then they're not so much focused or concerned about the terrorism issue. Then the focus becomes really the nuclear flashpoint issue. I mean, that is always the problem, and to an extent, that is always the Pakistani objective, to create a kind of a situation where other countries are worried about what is happening in South Asia. Now, the only way you can counter that is by having a Pakistan policy which, while keeping the focus on terrorism, also has a medium and longer term perspective. Because what is very clear, and this has been said multiple times by government spokesmen in India, that we certainly don't want to end up in an escalatory situation where neither side has control over the escalation ladder, because that is certainly an area you don't want to get into. Now, to avoid those kind of situations and at the same time keep a very strong focus on terrorism, you certainly have to move away from the present position where you are not engaging with Pakistan at all on any issue, whether it's terrorism, whether it's POK. There is a total absence of any engagement. At the same time, you don't want others to get involved in it. So, this is a kind of absolutely standstill type situation, which is not in your longer term interest. Because as the major power in South Asia, as the country which obviously has so much more diplomatic heft, and you have so many more economic and strategic strengths and options than Pakistan has, the expectation from the world is that what is your longer term game plan? How are you going to deal with this very recalcitrant neighbor and not present us with a situation which is going to tilt towards an escalation process which neither of you can control? I think that is really the challenge. And frankly, I cannot see a way out of that challenge except by, looking at the situation beyond the purely military terms. Yes, a certain major military confrontation took place, and perhaps we inflicted a certain amount of damage, and it imparted a certain extent of unpredictability in how we are going to deal with future terrorist attacks. All those are good positives. But now you have to think beyond that about the next steps and about a medium term and longer term policy. And that you cannot have the elements of such a policy in place by saying that I will not have anything to do with Pakistan at all. And at the same time, I don't want others to get involved in this situation. Also, we will deal with it bilaterally. So that contradiction has to be addressed.
Good point. I'm going to ask Casey if he has an idea on how to address this contradiction, but after a very quick break, so stay with us. Hello and welcome back to a cover story conversation. We are taking a look at what next for India and Pakistan, and also India's position globally. Ambassador Casey Singh, what next? If we are not talking to Pakistan, we don't want anyone to mediate. So then, how do we go forward from here, as Ambassador Raghavan asked? And secondly, why was India so isolated globally?
Well, I totally agree with High Commissioner Raghavan that you need to engage Pakistan. Simply behaving as if, and Prime Minister Vajpayee used to say that you can choose your friends, you can't choose your neighbors. And certainly a neighbor with nuclear weapons, you can't just ignore them. I think what we need to do is, it has to be a new dialogue. You see, the old composite dialogue, which started in 97, had a critical flaw. It had confidence building measures, what is called low hanging fruit, like trade or Sir Creek or so on and so forth. And it had dispute resolution, Kashmir. So we clubbed confidence building measures and dispute resolution, which is illogical because confidence building measures are supposed to facilitate and create the environment for dispute resolution. And in this, what will happen will be that Pakistan will get impatient with the speed on resolution of Kashmir being slow, and they'll pull back on the other things. So they'll not let you adopt any confidence building measures. So it'll all come to a naught. Now, you have to have a new dialogue, and two very obvious subjects are there. One is terrorism, and I think the other one is waters, river waters. I won't say POK. POK is just to make a point. But we've introduced a new weapon, which is the river waters. Now, in the past, Pakistanis will say when we had a dialogue, terrorism can stop, we don't control it. However, if the Kashmir thing is resolved, it will stop. No, which used to imply that they did control it. But they are not going to try to control it unless you satisfy them. Resolution of Kashmir means you do what they want and give them what they want. They are not looking for a compromise. So now you have a new weapon. And the weapon is, okay, if you don't stop terrorism, then water is the weapon that we have. So we have an ongoing weapon which can be flexibly used both to threaten as well as to hit home. And let them then control it. Link terrorism to water, not to Kashmir resolution. I think that's a new opportunity, and you can't do it without talking to them. So we say, all right, we will engage you, but there has to be a new set of subjects. We have to resolve those two subjects first. Don't keep saying we will not talk till you stop terrorism. They're not going to stop. They're probably not even able to stop because the civilian government has little control over the army, and the army. And if you're talking to them, you can play politics with them. Imran Khan is sitting in a jail. He's the one who tried controlling the army, whom the army hates. We don't even take Imran's name. If you're talking to them, we can then talk about their domestic politics. Play politics with them. Not just, no, we are very happy if a train is hijacked in Baluchistan. They're not going to let go of Baluchistan. You think a strong army like that will overnight let Baluchistan go? There has to be strategic thinking. There's too much of tactical operations-based thinking. For instance, who is there at the moment at the top levels in MEA, as well as in Prime Minister's office, who has dealt with Pakistan directly, who will have first-hand knowledge of how dealing with them. Or let's say, even a Punjabi for that matter. As somebody put it, if you want to understand Field Marshal Munir, you have to understand how a Punjabi Muslim's mind works. Don't just keep operating theoretically that you think, he's going to behave a particular way, etc. So there is, I think, too limited and too restricted a group of people who've been handling with the issues. Prime Minister has to break out of this. And I think what he requires is a new set of people who sit down and think outside the box and say, we need to deal with differently. Let's be confident. Why are you scared of talking to Pakistan? Let them run from the dialogue. Then the world will not intervene or mediate if you're talking to each other. Talking doesn't mean you surrender or you give up anything. talking is simply to tell them, okay, these are the two issues. You deal with yours and we will not trouble you.
Right. I think good point that has been made over here, and perhaps maybe the all-party delegation could be handled at a domestic level also on how to handle Pakistan instead of sending it outwards. But moving on is the issue of Trump, the Donald Trump issue. How much harm has Donald Trump done to us, Mr. Raghavan?
Well, it's like this. From the 8th of May, and especially on the 9th of May, and early on the 10th morning, the escalation process appeared to be heading in a direction which certainly neither India nor Pakistan wanted. We had planned this as a major counterterrorism operation, striking deep inside Pakistan, targeting iconic terrorist sites and iconic places which have been associated with the major terrorist groups which have carried out spectacular attacks in India in the past. But that phase of the operation had come to an end, and it had now entered an escalatory phase.
Yes.
And certainly the US role in whatever role it was, perhaps it was a minimal role which they have amplified, but certainly there was some role, because there were a number of conversations from the 9th onwards they held both with Pakistan and with India at a high level. So certainly there was some role. Perhaps it has been amplified by the Americans, but that role was helpful. Because in the past also, during Kargil, after the parliament attack, during Balakot, the US has played a role in making sure that the escalation process does not go out of control. And that intervention was helpful from our point of view. So it is not as if we do not want the US anywhere in the radar screen. We do want them to intervene, because it acts as a check to the escalation process. But at the same time, we don't want a wider role, which is what President Trump has interpreted the events as giving him a mandate to now execute. I mean, that is the black swan event that he has, somehow given to himself this larger than life role on the India-Pakistan stage. So we have to also deal with that issue, that you cannot exclude the United States completely from an India-Pakistan interface which is heading towards conflict. But at the same time, you don't want them to play a larger role. And I think the only way you can do that, and in the past, that was the way we approached it also, that you engage yourselves. You engage yourselves on the issues which concern you. And as Ambassador K.C. Singh said, the fact that you are having a dialogue, or the fact that you're engaging, or the fact that you're having a conversation, doesn't mean that you're giving up your positions at all. Because diplomacy doesn't mean that you have, somehow eroded the centrality of your positions or your values. So to that extent, we do need to nuance our current policy.
But Ambassador Singh, in terms of the way US talks to Pakistan, we've come a long way from Clinton's finger wagging at Musharraf. Now the way they're talking, they're talking to both India and Pakistan in an equal tone. The tone has changed of the way US talks to Pakistan, or am I reading it wrong?
I think, our memory is short. Just go back to 2019. 2019, Trump had intervened. He was on a tour in Far East. He'd come for an APEC summit. So they intervened from there. And even then, it was Trump who announced there's going to be a ceasefire. And remember, when has Pakistan handed back an Air Force pilot? Within 2 days or 3 days of a skirmish. And that was very critical for India, because the elections were coming up. And he helped BJP tremendously. Now, a few months later, BJP swept the election. A few months later, July, Imran Khan was with Trump at the White House. And standing next to him, Trump said, again, Kashmir issue. I have a feeling that even then the Americans gave some commitment to Imran Khan, that once the elections are over, there will be discussion. But 2 weeks after that July White House event, we did the Article 370. We took the action on Kashmir. So within a fortnight of that event, I don't know whether Trump remembers it or doesn't remember it. But I would imagine somewhere at the back of his mind, there is something stuck in his head, probably from that time. And that's why it keeps coming time and again to that point. So I think now he's linked it to trade. He thinks he has a lever in trade, and he's combined it with trade, and he's using it because that's a lever he's using against the rest of the world. So it's got more complicated because it's a different Trump. It's a much more aggressive Trump, uncontrolled by advisors around him. And he's got it, and there are reports today, I don't know whether they're reliable, there's some cryptocurrency engagement by Pakistan or some other way of reaching them. I don't know whether that's correct or not. But very simply, he has hyphenated India-Pakistan again. He's treating them as sort of co-equals who need to talk to each other. And that for Pakistan is a win, because that's exactly what they're calling a win. And they're sitting in the UN Security Council. And that's the other thing. When they were up for election for the Security Council, why didn't we work hard enough to have them defeated? We should have realized that 2 years of Pakistan, which means we were smug at that point. That point, we thought Pakistan doesn't matter. Kashmir issue is over. If they're in the Security Council, who gives a damn? Let them be there. It doesn't matter. Now it's coming back to haunt us because they will, for a month, raise all kinds of issues. It may well be the Indus Water Treaty. And who is the person who will veto it for you? Russia is not going to veto it. Americans will not be vetoing it. Would you be relying on your dear friend France? They're not known for vetoing things. So we will have quite a trying 1 month when they are cheering that. And these delegations going there, they're fine. They will talk to them. But I think you need interventions at a much higher level with those 9 non-permanent members to be able to really influence them. Just these delegations are giving them a lecture, going and telling them, those are all known. India's position is known on terrorism. Pakistan's involvement is known. So we need an entirely different level of engagement. And that's why the external affairs ministers in Europe, he's not totally depending on, because there are 2 countries which are there. You got Denmark and Greece. These 2 countries. And Greece will go along with you anyway because Turkey is gone with Pakistan. So the Greeks have anyway stood up for us. So at least one of the non-permanent members, European members, but we are focusing on Denmark. So it has to be, I think the engagement will have to be over the next month and a half at the ministerial or a higher level with those countries concerned to start influencing them. These delegations are kind of just more for domestic display rather than for really having a major diplomatic impact.
And diplomacy has many nuances, but thank you so much for a very candid conversation. I really enjoyed it, and I hope to have you both back again soon. But on that note, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.